You know that moment when your phone lights up and instead of curiosity, you feel a quiet heaviness? Not because you're busy, not because you don't care, but because something in you just doesn't want to engage. So you let it ring. You don't reply. Days pass, then weeks, and eventually, without saying anything out loud, that person just disappears from your life. Most people don't understand this moment. From the outside, it looks cold, distant, even cruel. It gets labeled as selfishness, avoidance, or an inability to maintain relationships. But what often gets missed is that this isn't random behavior. It's a pattern. There's a certain kind of person who, at some point, starts quietly cutting people off. Not out of anger, not always after a big conflict. Sometimes it happens almost silently. And what's really going on here is far more complex than people realize. Psychologically, this behavior is often tied to how the brain processes emotional safety. The human nervous system is constantly scanning for threat, not just physical danger, but emotional unpredictability. And when someone has repeatedly experienced relationships that felt overwhelming, inconsistent, or draining, the brain adapts. It learns that distance feels safer than connection. Studies in attachment theory suggest that people who lean toward avoidant patterns aren't lacking emotion. In fact, they often feel things deeply, but their brain associates closeness with potential stress, so it creates space as a form of regulation. From the outside, it looks detached. On the inside, it's often self-protection. And this pattern rarely starts in adulthood. It builds slowly. Maybe it came from growing up in an environment where emotions weren't handled gently, or where being open led to being misunderstood, or where closeness came with pressure, expectation, or instability. Over time, the nervous system starts to simplify things. Less connection, less risk. Less vulnerability, less pain. So instead of confronting, explaining, or negotiating emotional boundaries, the brain chooses something more efficient. It disconnects. Not because it prefers isolation, but because it has learned that this is the cleanest way to stay regulated. And it's important to say this clearly. This isn't better or worse than any other way of relating. Some people move toward others when things feel uncertain. Others move away. Both are adaptations. Both are human. But here's where it gets more nuanced. The same ability to walk away that protects you can also quietly isolate you, because cutting people off removes not only the stress, but also the possibility of repair, of being understood differently, of experiencing connection in a way that feels safe instead of overwhelming. So there's a paradox. Distance creates peace, but it can also create loneliness. And many people who do this don't fully notice that second part until much later. Still, none of this means something is wrong with you. It means your mind learned a strategy that worked. At some point, disconnecting gave you relief. It gave you control. It gave you a sense of stability when something felt too much. And that makes sense, completely. The interesting thing is, not everyone who cuts people off wants to stay distant forever. Some are just waiting for a kind of connection that doesn't feel like something they have to escape from. And if any part of this felt familiar, there's probably more to your patterns than you've been told, not just in how you disconnect, but in how you choose who gets close in the first place.